guess probably the biggest one besides the ones that we've talked about would be the end of the end of the top half when he when he spent like a good 2 minutes sort of going back and forth with himself about whether he'd be willing to raise Jeff Bezos's taxes by 1% if that could be used to house every single homeless veteran. And and it's like, all right, if this is, again, if anybody's watching this who takes like the populist Brandon seriously, like the fact that this is such a hard question for him, like that just seems like that should be pretty decisive.
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking, especially since you're talking about 1%, you're not talking about taking away 90% of his money or anything.
Yeah. No, exactly.
Yeah, and I like the way you made that point too, because you said something like, I think we probably established at this point that he's not going to do that voluntarily, because you mentioned that he had said in a previous debate that he would hope that Jeff Bezos would give away that money voluntarily, but now he's gone to space, so it seems pretty clear that he won't do it voluntarily. I'm curious about what your opinion is on this, because I'm not sure whether I've heard you talk about it before, because there's some lefties who think that billionaires shouldn't exist, and I'm wondering what you think about that, because I personally think that people should be allowed to make. I don't know where I don't really have any idea where I would draw the line, but I think that billionaires should be allowed to exist, but they should pay way more taxes than they do, and they basically de facto pays almost no taxes most of the time, which is kind of fucked up, because they should pay proportionally more taxes than other people who make way less money.
Yeah. So I guess one thing I point out about this is that it is incredibly difficult, almost impossible, to make it up to the point of being a billionaire just by
meritocracy.
Well, not just that, but like the kind of like when we think about like people who are like really rich, in the ordinary sense of really rich, who got really rich from like writing a book that sold 1 million copies, or having being like a crazy successful rock star, things like that. Like it is just about impossible to make it up to the point of being a billionaire by doing stuff like that. Like I think J.K. Rowling maybe was up there at one point, although even there, I think that's not really for book sales. That like a lot of that was like sort of secondary intellectual property, coming out of that.
Like movies and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Like movie rights and the toys and all that stuff, right? That like, but again, so J.K. Rowling maybe was there at one point, but like Stephen King isn't a billionaire. Mick Jagger isn't a billionaire. Like the people we think of as just like insanely successful within those fields. They don't have $1 billion. It's incredibly difficult to have $1 billion, right? Like if I, think about. Well, here let me see if I can remember this. Probably can't off the top of my head, but so all right. Let's see, just a second. So, all right, good. So times 1. Yeah. All right. So let's see. So just to put this in perspective, just had to run the numbers really quickly to make sure I didn't mess this up. But the imagine that Christopher Columbus, I don't know, he was a vampire or something, so he could like live for hundreds and hundreds of years, and every day, starting with the day that he landed in the New World in 1492, he earned $1,000 a day. So 1492 to the present, 1492 to 2021, every single day, 365 days a year, he'd earned $1,000 a day. He would be nowhere close to being a billionaire today. Like,
oh wow, okay.
Not even close. He would have. I just ran it through the computer calculator, so he would have $193 million in change. So that's a again, very rich by normal people standards, but like that's like less than 1/5 of $1 billion. It like I mean, sometimes I think part of the problem is that million and billion rhyme, that like it's almost it's almost the same word, so that like, and because we can't really conceptualize either one, like it just sort of like all runs together. It's like, oh yeah, so it's like there's a million and then you get like a little bit bigger and it's a billion, but it's like, this is just an insanely large amount of money, $1 billion. And if somebody does make it up to that, just by being like such a successful, author, rock star, or whatever, then whatever, as you say, right? They should have to give back a giant chunk of it, in taxes, but like, exactly how much, I guess we could argue about it. It's hard to just sort of settle that a priori, but like, I guess the bigger point that I would make about the should billionaires exist question is like what the existence of billionaires says about the economic system that gives rise to them. Because, if you think about like economic inequality, like, all right, I think that even in like a socialist society where you have like everything, all of the economic enterprises, all the businesses, or all the businesses of a certain size, maybe, whatever, like I think if you I think if you like hire a couple people part-time to to do like web design and stuff like that, like you shouldn't necessarily have to form a cooperative with them, but like like all of the but all of the businesses of a decent size, say, right, we're either state owned or worker owned or some combination of the two, right, like that. So like a fully social society of the kind that whatever, God willing, the 22nd century or something, we could have, like, even in that society, there'd be some economic inequality, right? I mean, because like not for all sorts of reasons, right? Like that.
That's an important point, because a lot of conservatives say that lefties want there to be equal proportionality for everyone in all aspects of society. But if you actually like listen to like people like you or like and any number of other people, I never actually hear anyone advocating for that.
Yeah. Have you seen the Martin Scorsese movie Casino?
Yeah.
Okay. So you remember the scene in Casino? It's basically to establish that De Niro's character Ace Rothstein has like lost it. And like showing like how intensely he's trying to micromanage everything at the casino, and like he's sitting at one of the like restaurant tables, and there are like a couple of blueberry muffins that are open, and he goes nuts because one of the muffins has more blueberries in it than the other one, and he like storms back to the kitchen and demands exactly as many blueberries in every muffin, and the cook is like, do you have any idea how long that would take to make sure there's exactly like, it's like that's the impression that I get sometimes, like listening to like Jordan Peterson types talk about this stuff, that like that socialists think that that like we should have this like some sort of like all powerful bureaucracy to make sure that in some sort of crazy exactly as many blueberries in every muffin way, everybody has exactly the same resources as everybody else. And I think honestly,
sorry that that was making me think about was, I don't remember whether you went over this on your show or not, but yeah, you're probably familiar with it, that thing with Barry Weiss going on MSNBC or CNN and saying something like the world's gone mad, and one of her examples was, you can't say that men and women are different. And like, who is saying that? I don't see anyone saying that.
Well, and it's also like, I think that's also incredibly vague, right? Like, what is that like? Like, there's some. I mean, I think there's a little bit of a Maud and Bailey thing going on in that example, because it's like, are men and women different? Like, sure. I mean, in some ways, definitely, right? I mean, that you know, like, you know, that estrogen and testosterone are different. You know, being able to, you know, give birth, not your, you know, these are all important human differences, but they're not the kind of differences anybody will get mad at you if you say, right? Like, the kind of differences, like, you know, the kind of differences that are actually like controversial are like, you know, I don't know, you know,
Men shouldn't wear dresses.
Yeah, like either you're saying that there should be strict gender rules, or you're saying that like there are differences in like intelligence or leadership abilities or something like that. Those are like controversial difference claims. But just because people are getting mad about that doesn't mean that they think that there are literally no differences, you know, between men and women. And yeah, so I think that in this case too, right? Like, okay, in that like hypothetical, you know, 22nd century kind of system that I just described, you know, you are for sure going to get a certain degree of economic inequality, because like, you know, people are doing different things with their lives, and, you know, and even with like a lot of redistribution or whatever, those are going to have different, you know, effects. And even within like a worker owned like cooperative business, you know, you are going to get some income differences, because like you might either have to, you know, incentivize people to like, you know, if there are certain jobs that you need to have like gone to school for a certain number of years to do, you know, it might be that you need to pay people more to incentivize people to like spend those extra years in school to do it. Or on the other end,
that's another thing that people like, that I've heard you make that sort of claim before, and other like other lefties, and that's like another straw man that I hear from conservatives sometimes, like, oh, if you're for worker co-ops, you're it's similar to that. You're a hypocrite if you make any profit from your YouTube channel. Like, if you don't have equal distribution of all your resources in your YouTube channel and you advocate for worker co-ops, that means you're a fraud.
Yeah. No, exactly. And like, and you could have, and you could have income inequality at the other end too, right? Because if, like, you know, if we had a society that was enough more equal overall, that nobody was going to take the worst jobs just out of desperation, you know, because it was like that, or just like total poverty, then you might actually have to pay people more to do some of the worst, like dirtiest, most undesirable jobs, you know, which would kind of be the opposite of the way our society works. But in any case, like, so those are all reasons why you might get some degree of income inequality even within a single co-op. But that's only really realistically, that's only going to be an inequality within a certain range, right? Like, you know, you don't, like, if you need to pay some people a little bit more than others to, you know, because they have certain responsibilities that they're not going to take on without that, or, you know, because it's like a particularly dirty job, or because of like any number of other reasons, like in Mondragon, right, the largest, like, you know, worker co-op that exists right now in the world in Spain, you know, I think the maximum pay difference between like the highest paid executive at Mondragon and like the lowest paid worker is like 11-1. And that's even when they're like competing with like regular capitalist companies. I think in an economic environment where every company was organized like Mondragon, probably be a lot less than that. But like, you know, regardless, let's say it was 11-1 forever, right? Like, okay, like, but that's compared to like hundreds to one in the rest of the economy. And you're not going to get, like, even if you have to, you know, pay some people a little bit more than others for different kinds of incentives, you're not going to get like these kinds of crazy differences where like people, you know, like, you're not going to get the kind of income different, like, inequality that you get between like Jeff Bezos and people who, you know, work as warehouses. Because if the people in the warehouses get to vote on the pay scales, you might be able to convince them to vote for pay scales that are like a little unequal because like, you know, you could sort of show them that you need to do this in order to get people to do certain jobs or whatever. But like, you're not going to get them to, you know, you're not going to get them to vote for one that's so unequal that like, you know, the people at the top end can buy their own spaceships. So
yeah,
you know,
or
so
like after the 2008 stock market crash, we're gonna put caps on the bonuses, but they're still gonna get bonuses.
Yeah, right. Like, and of course, you know, even though the bonuses are like a tiny fraction of like what they're paying to the bailouts, it still feels like kind of insult to injury, right? You know, it's like we're you know gonna go with like our hands out that like you have to you know, you have to pay us, you know, you have to bail us out, you know, after we, you know, fucked everything up, you know, that you know, right, the, you know, profits are private, but, you know, losses are going to be social, you know,
Yep.
but sorry, we're too big to fail. The effects could be too bad on the rest of the economy if you don't bail us out. But then also we're going to spend some of it on giving executives crazy bonuses.